to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Chris Shipman, Associate Director at the Utah High School Activities Association. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in Utah and across the nation where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
I grew up in Salt Lake City, went to Cottonwood High School. From there, traveled down to Cedar City and went through the coaching factory down there. Spent 3 years on the staff of the football team after my playing eligibility was done there.
Okay, what years would that? What years would those
So
be?
I got down there in 2000, and then my last year down there was 2007.
And so the last 3 years you were coaching there?
Yes.
Okay, so Jack Bishop was still there, or?
No, Jack Bishop was gone. I played for C. Ray Gregory, Gary Anderson, and Wes Meyer.
Oh, okay. All right, three. Okay. All right, perfect. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, that's great. So yeah, kind of was down there, floated around, coached college football at Western Washington for a year before they dropped football. And that experience was kind of, okay, I'm ready to do something a little bit more stable.
Let me interrupt you again.
Yeah.
So I'm ignorant to the geography of what Western Washington is in.
In Bellingham, Washington. So it is on the north of Seattle on the Canadian border, on the coast.
Okay. How way north, like real close to the border then?
Yep, it's closer to the border. Vancouver's closer than Seattle.
Okay. All right, perfect. Continue again. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep, no problem. So spent a year up there. They dropped football and I kind of went, I don't know if I want to do the college thing and moving across the country. Came back to Salt Lake and started working with Dustin Pierce at Hunter High School. And then from there, kind of went on a long path to where I am now at the Activities Association.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that long path, because I know before you took the job, which is I hope everyone knows this, I think you just started the 1st of August, so, or maybe the 1st of July.
1st of July was kind of the official start date. The office is still under construction, so we got take as much time in July as you would like.
So how did someone who basically is the Granite District Athletic Director get to be an associate director at the Utah High School Activities Association?
I'd been at the district level since 2019. And kind of through that process, I saw the impact that can be made kind of systemically in how being in some of these positions can really help some kids. And I think it was my experience in Granite working with that diverse population and the size of it. I mean, we have 8 high schools and 15 junior highs and have a fully functioning junior high athletic program. So I think those kind of things helped me be in a position to accept a job at the Activities Association.
Let's talk for a minute about the junior high program in Granite District, only because my daughter, who you've probably met, who's married to Coach Kerr, she was a gymnast up at Churchill, and I know they had volleyball, basketball, gymnastics at the time. This was back in the 90s, and she actually went to Churchill and then decided to come to Jordan with me, but I know that you're maybe one of, I don't know. I think they still may have junior high athletics up in Ogden district, but
Ogden, Nebo, Davis all have some. I think we have the largest. So we have,
yeah,
in the fall, we have boys and girls cross country, boys and girls soccer. And these are the sports are separated into terms as close as they could be. So kind of first term, they'll have cross country and soccer for boys and girls. The soccer are those, and it's team sports. So soccer, basketball, and volleyball are run a little bit differently. They'll have a roughly a 10-day intramural period at the school where instead of just having the 2-day tryout. So
right.
it gives those kids 10 days to kind of come in a kind of a low stakes environment. It should be work with the PE class and teach them soccer, teach them basketball, teach them volleyball, install the offense, install a defense, do those things, kind of get that deeper understanding than you would get in just a regular class. Then after those 10 days, they'll select an all-star team, and that team will play half of our junior highs. We split them into 2 divisions, and they play 6 games, and the number 1 seeds from each team play each other in the district championship. So it's a fun thing that we do. We do let's see, the cross country, soccer, basketball, volleyball, wrestling, track and field.
Yeah, I have a granddaughter who's actually going to Olympus now, going into the 9th grade, but last year as an 8th grader, ran at the district track meet out at Taylorsville and was on the Evergreen soccer team. And so we went to Benyon, we went to Wasatch. We made that. I think they played every Wednesday, possibly, if I remember right. We made
usually Monday and Wednesday.
Play. Yeah.
We try and avoid those high school days to keep officials. So we do. That's the other thing is those athletics all utilize the Activities Association officials. So it's the junior high kids getting high school officials. And I talk with the officials and kind of say, look, this is more of a learning environment for them. Take time to teach in those, and they've been awesome with doing that. And I think it's helped our kids kind of find some enjoyment in those sports, even if they don't participate at the high school level.
Well, that's great. And while we're talking about youth sports, and let me ask you, what sports did you participate as a youth as you were growing up?
So growing up, football was the biggest. That was the driving force with me. Then I wrestled and I played rugby for Highland back in the late 90s. So I graduated from Cottonwood High School in 2000.
Okay. Graduated from Cottonwood in 2000, played rugby for Highland because that was the only rugby team at the time.
It was Highland, Skyline, and Murray.
Okay. So, and help me with this because once again, my memory is faded because I'm old. When you were at Cottonwood, was that when the Cottonwood had that good run of teams? It was before that. That run happened after you left then.
Yep.
Okay. Let's have you talk for a minute about some of the mentors and leaders you've had in your life that have made a difference to you.
So the biggest are my parents, obviously, but they, growing up with their involvement in athletics was very much the behind the scenes. They were always the one, doing the team meals, being the president of the Little League, doing all those things to make sure that the kids were taken care of. And that's probably the biggest influence it's had on me in seeking this position that I'm currently at. In high school, I had some great coaches. Ben Ohai and Jeff Jackson were my wrestling coaches in high school that are still people that I look up to today. I was fortunate enough to, at Granger, work with Jeff Jackson. He's an assistant principal there. And those guys they're still guys I look up to this day and how to carry yourself. My time at SUU, I got a lot of, having three head coaches, you get a lot of different staffs that roll through there.
Yeah.
during that time, I was very fortunate that I had, see, Aaron Roderick was our offensive coordinator, and Kalani Sataki was my position coach.
Wow.
Yeah, so I there's some great leadership I learned from those guys in the time that I spent there. And then the when I got into teaching, Miley Lou was the first principal to hire me at Hunter High School.
At Hunter, I remember Miley. Yeah.
Yep, took a chance on me, and it's worked off so far. And then later, Jerry Haslam hired me at Granger, and that's where I got hooked up with Dave Vandevegate as the wrestling coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's another huge asset and just a great example of what a father and a man should be. Currently, I rely heavily on some of the leadership positions that are in Granite, just where I came from, with Craig Stauffer and Garrett Muse before he retired. Noel Converse, my director in Granite, was amazing. It still is amazing. Was a great person to work for. All of the Granite ADs are amazing, and I hope they don't lose my number because I will be bugging them constantly.
I like that.
But from all of those people, the biggest kind of thing that I got was, show up. You've got to be there to help. You can't do it from afar.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks for that insight. Chris, let me ask you this. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
So I have a 3 and a 5-year-old kids at home. So every day I wake up thinking I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm right. And I am quickly reminded that everything I think is wrong, that they know exactly what to do. So again, with that, it's every day I know I'm going to screw something up every day. It's how we learn. It's owning those mistakes and being accountable and learning from them. That are really the most important part of it, and controlling what I can, which is my attitude and how I react to things. My years at Granger taught me that you're going to get hit with things that you never saw coming, and when you do, you just got to remember kind of what's the best thing for the kids, and go that way.
Let me ask you about the job of athletic administrator and how it's different today than when you first got involved in athletic administration.
So there's a lot more to it in the last 5 years, just responsibility wise. Even from the time I left the school. So I left the schools in 2019. Which was the COVID year. So I was fortunate enough that I did not have to participate in the testing. I got to send out emails to all of my colleagues saying, I wish you the best of luck. If there's anything I can do, let me know. And they can share with you their responses. I've already received some of them, but it was so seeing them go through that was hard because there wasn't an end in sight. And now kind of coming out of that, it just seems like there's more and more that gets added to it. Emerging sports are coming more and more prevalent, which is great. But with that, it becomes a bigger and bigger job. Just with things that we dealt with in the district and some of the Title IX reporting that's been required over the last couple of years. For me, doing that for our schools, because we had 22 schools that were participating in interscholastic athletics. So we had to do the Title IX reports for 22 of those schools, and taking those to the board, to our local board, and going, what do you want this to look like? And they go, we don't want this. We want it to do this. So in that sense, it's become, there's a lot more paperwork. There's a lot more political influence coming from community members over wanting, access to the new buildings that are being built. When there's that shiny new building, everyone wants to be in it and utilize it. And while yes, the schools are there to serve the community, they are also there to serve the community students. Not everyone's, they're not the local track where your dog can be walked and those things. It's one of those fine lines that I know ADs in my district fight, and I'm sure they do everywhere.
Absolutely.
I'm glad your dog's out there, but I really need you to pick up the poop so I don't have to do it for football practice. So yeah, those are hard ones. And just the amount of time and the number of students that they're serving. We saw a big increase post-COVID in participation numbers. I think it might end up leveling back out, but it's I know at the schools it's been hard trying to keep the updated paperwork on everybody and what the activity association and then what districts are also having coaches do is hard. ADs have a lot of plates that they're spinning.
Yeah, no question about that. Let's have you talk for a moment about the UIAAA and about your journey with the UIAAA. What made you decide, as a new athletic director, I need to get involved, etc.?
Well, the first thing was that awesome conference. That was the first thing Joylyn Clark told me when I was at Granger was, you're going to be the AD with me. We get to go to St. George every year. And then from that, it's transferred from not only me playing terrible golf, but also being able to network with people around the state and find out that, hey, that issue that's in West Valley, it's also in Moab. It's also in Richfield. And that networking and that education that happens there, some of it, a lot, it's really nice when you take a course and you go, we're doing the right things. We've already got this implemented. That is almost, for me, was very reassuring this last April. Was going, okay, we made the right choice in going this direction. And then just the little updates that change, in learning those little nuances that change from year to year and laws that pertain to athletics that we need to be a part of. I think I'm very excited to continue to build the relationship I have with the UIAAA and the network of great athletic directors that are involved in it.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. We talked earlier about your qualifications, how you did apply, but my question specifically is you're the Granite District AD, and I realize there's a position that becomes open. So why did you decide I'm going to apply? And so was it just was it time or you'd been there for 4 years or something else?
So I think the biggest part of it was the timing of it. I just finished getting my administrative license, finishing up all that coursework and getting that from the state. And I was kind of going, do I want to go back into a school as an assistant principal? Or do I want to stay in this athletic director position? What do I want to do? And when this position came up, to me, it was the best of both worlds. And it's dealing strictly with those extracurricular activities that are that extension of the classroom, but it is truly where you get individualized support. I don't think the public understands the amount of time that each coach spends on a kid, making sure that they get better. It's more than your typical teacher in a classroom, having done both. So it was that avenue was the excitement was, I can pursue an opportunity to help build something that was very important to me with extracurricular activities, and get those, allow access to students statewide to experience that instead of just within Granite School District.
All right, some great insight. Thank you for sharing that. What's one common myth about being an athletic director that you'd like to debunk?
That it's glamorous. It does not look like The Rock on Ballers. That is not, it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of grunt work that you didn't know was part of the gig because it's not what's told to you. It's hey, you're going to be the athletic director of a high school. You didn't realize that meant setting up tables and chairs and sweeping the bleachers after basketball games and doing all of those things to get games ready at your school. And just that it's more, there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. But at the same time, that was the stuff I liked. I liked kind of getting my hands dirty and running the hurdle carts at region meets and doing that stuff. So it's that, yeah, it's more work than you ever thought you were going to do. And it's also more rewarding.
Well, very well said. I remember watching a high school football game last year, one of the broadcasts during the regular season on KJazz, and they talked about someone who was going to become the AD, and the announcer says, well, yeah, you're going to become the AD, so now you can just hang out and watch all the games. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's about 5% of what the job is.
I couldn't tell you anything that happened to any game I worked.
No,
coaching different, right? And that, I think that's what was really nice when my time at Granger was working with Joylyn Clark and Sarah Thomas, allowing me to continue to coach football. Because that football game is not an athletic contest. That is a community event.
Sure.
It's become a lot more than just two teams going at it. It's go to anyone and you'll see it's just not, it's not what they were 20 years ago, and it's definitely not what they were 50 years ago. There's a lot more to them. Community members and others wanting to be a part of them and trying to coordinate all those pieces, and then you've got your homecoming game and wanting to know why the SBO president's driving a car on your track. It's a lot of headaches.
Well, you mentioned Joy Lynn and Sarah. That Joy Lynn happily retired now. Sarah,
yes,
assistant principal at West High.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to write myself a note and get her on the podcast. So I'm going to write this down here, and then we'll continue on with your interview. What's the favorite part of your job? Two-part question. The favorite part of your job as an AD, and now the favorite part of your job, even though you've only been there for 3 weeks at the UHSAA.
So my favorite part was watching kids succeed and do something that they never thought they could. And I really think that only happens in athletics. It's not something that it can happen in every other subject in school, but I think athletics is the one place where you get raw emotion. When you get to see the raw emotion of people, and it's exciting. It's I get emotional thinking about it. But yeah, just witnessing the emotion and the passion that everyone has for athletics, and watching those kids that never thought that they were going to be able to do something and actually do it well. I had a kid when I was at Granger. I got made the head track coach because we had a girl get hit in the head with the disc. So they went,
Oof.
okay, we've got to have someone come in and it's just going to roll a tight ship. Let's go get the football coach, right? So, but through that, learned a lot and really learned to love kind of track, because that's the one sport where it is 100% individual. Those kids are, I might not place at state, but I got better my last race. And to see that growth. But I had a kid that had never, going into his junior year, never thought about throwing or doing anything, came out as something to do as a junior, as a senior, decided to take it serious and placed in shot, disc, and javelin. And just watching someone that find that passion and that enjoyment for competition is very rewarding.
Very good. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first is, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic director, and they need to follow your suggestions in order to be a success. What are Chris's 2 suggestions for a new AD to be successful?
Do what's best for kids. If you believe that what you're doing is right for kids, you'll be fine. And ask for help. You're gonna screw up. Someone else out there has screwed up 3 or 4 times
Or more.
Learn from their experience, right? Kind of. So do what's best for kids, and you're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay.
Well said. Let's finish up with this question. What question should I have asked you, Chris, that I failed to ask you?
See, and that was a hard one, because these were good questions. I don't know, Hutch. You're the pro. You're the host. You tell me.
Well, no, I always throw that out, and people think that I'm smart. I actually stole the question from Dan Rather watching his interviews, but it's usually a good way to end up. So if there's something I forgot to cover, it just gives the guest a chance to say something. And if we've covered everything, then that's great. So
it's that question's a lot like the one I asked Rob in the end of my interview, kind of when they give you the time. And it was, well, what are your expectations for this person year one?
Well, that's great. And so
Yeah.
did they answer it how you wanted to have it?
Work.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they did, because I took the job, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Chris Shipman, Associate Director of the Utah High School Activities Association. Thanks for being on the podcast today, Chris.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.